It's a warm welcome here in our studios from Sarakona. This is the Star TV News and I'm Ajaka Nisanka. In the headlines tonight, Gambia Immigration Department inaugurates 2 additional stations. Parliament rejects President's appointed Ombudsman. Sidia Jatta calls Office of the Ombudsman powerless. On the international scene, head of UN recognized government in Libya asks world leaders for help. Ahead of elections, Taiwan President called on China biggest threat. The women at the front lines of India's citizenship law protests. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail. The Gambia Immigration Department on Tuesday, 24 December 2019, presided over the inauguration ceremony of 2 stations, one at the premises of Kotu Police Station and Bundung. The construction of these stations is jointly funded by the companies, industries and philanthropy organizations within that particular jurisdiction. Jacqueline Colley reports.
This is part of the national security sector reform process, which is geared towards providing professional and standard security services in the country. These buildings are well equipped with modern office facilities. The director of Gambia Immigration Department, CDM Toure, revealed how these new structures will enhance their work in providing effective services for the Gambian public and strengthen the security sector reform process. Director Toure also seized the opportunity to acknowledge the efforts of the local communities in financing the construction of these 2 immigration stations. Toure added that the Gambia Immigration Department has good annals when it comes to effective service delivery, which has positioned them as one of the leading examples in execution of laws in accordance with international standards. The CEO of the Sand Beach and Resort, Firamang Mane, expressed the need for his industry's support in funding the construction of an immigration station. Mr. Mane thanked the director of GID for availing him the opportunity. Other donors made similar sentiments as certificates of appreciation were awarded to all the organizations that contributed to the construction of these stations. Jacqueline Colley, Star TV News.
Parliamentarians on Friday, 27th December, rejected the appointment of Mr. Babukar Suare by President Adamo Barrow as Ombudsman. A vast majority of the National Assembly members voted against the appointment. Binta Koli files in this report.
Under the Constitution, the Ombudsman's functions are to investigate complaints of injustice, corruption, abuse of power, maladministration, and unfair treatment to any person by a public office in the exercise of official duties. Section 164, subsection 1 of the 1997 Constitution states, the President shall appoint the Ombudsman and his or her deputies in consultation with the Public Service Commission, subject to the confirmation of the National Assembly with 7 days of the presentation of the request. Subsection 2 states, in making an appointment under this section, the President shall have regard to the need for persons exercising the office of the Ombudsman to have substantial administrative or professional experience. Mr. Suare, who spent over 30 years in the Ministry of Education, was still rejected by Parliament. According to Sidia Jatta, MP for Woodley West, Suare was not rejected because he lacks experience. He said he has met many requirements, but the office of the Ombudsman is a very critical one. He has met all those requirements, but there are many issues. Ombudsman's position is very critical. Somebody said it's sensitive. A person running that office should not be tainted with any parochialism. The running of that office should not be catch up in any social web. The person running that office does not have to owe anybody any obligation, because if you owe people obligation, when they come to you, he will think that this man has helped me with this or that. So maybe I have to recuperate. That is what I mean this web. Somebody has to be free from all those web to be able to become armed in administering his position of the ombudsman, he stressed. Honorable Halifa Sallah, MP for Serekunda, described the office of ombudsman as no ordinary office. According to him, it was not the Public Service Commission that did the appointment. This is an executive appointment requiring oversight. Therefore, we share the power that if you appoint, we will scrutinize your appointment, so that there should only be eradication of the power of the president to appoint and leave it to a professional body that will consider all the experience necessary, substantial experience, and then appoint. But here, it is the executive that is given the power to appoint, and that is why it is important to have this body to do the scrutiny to confirm the appointment. If this august institution agreed, then we are mutually responsible and accountable for the performance of that office, and that is what the Constitution sought to do, because this office is not an ordinary office, Honorable Sallah said. Interestingly, the Vice President, Dr. Aissatou Toure, who went to Parliament to convince parliamentarians to confirm the appointment of Mr. Suare, was proven otherwise. She was, however, lambasted by some parliamentarians after she questioned their integrity. She was visibly angry that the judiciary rejected the appointment of the executive. Many see this as a new dawn in the history of this country. For Parliament to reject an appointment of the executive is truly unprecedented in the Gambia. Reporting for Star TV News, I am Binta Koli.
The National Assembly member for Woolly West, Honorable Sidia Jata, has believes that the office of the Ombudsman is powerless because it has not been performing what it is meant to. Honorable Jata said this during the consideration for the appointment of the Office of the Ombudsman on Friday, December 27, 2019. More in this report with Sina Bujase.
The Office of the Ombudsman is an official who holds the power to investigate allegations of maladministration, mismanagement, corruption, discriminatory, and deal with human rights and protection of fundamental freedoms of the citizenry. The Parliament was supposed to confirm the appointment of Mr. Babukar A. Suare as Ombudsman after he was appointed by the President, but he was rejected by the parliamentarians. According to Sidia Jata, offices are not created for the sake of just creating them. The creation of offices is for them to perform functions. According to Jata, the Ombudsman office is powerless. It is just existing for the sake of existing, but it is not performing what it's supposed to do because it doesn't have power. There are many reports in the Parliament, cases where people are unjustly dismissed and the Ombudsman recommended for their reinstatement and they are not reinstated. He therefore does not see the benefit or use of such an office. He wants the office to be empowered and independent so that it can perform its duties well without favoring any party or individual. The Ombudsman must be empowered, otherwise the office will be useless. For me, that is the most important thing that must be done. Otherwise, we are just wasting our time. They have been recommending things and no one has ever cared to implement what they recommend. And that is not the meaning of an ombudsman, he advised. In the case that anyone is found to have been justly treated, Ombudsman will take care of that. They will make sure that the person is treated justly. If the person is dismissed unjustly, he or she is reinstated. On the decision of the Parliament to reject Mr. Suare as Ombudsman, Honorable Jata said, I agree with the conclusion drawn by the committee. I have done my own research and this is what I have come to. I would have kicked against your report if you have not concluded the way you have. So thank you very much for having that. It seems that this National Assembly now is standing firm on its feet. I'm very proud, really proud, because we are here to ensure that whatever takes place here serves the supreme interest of our people. That is the role. The fundamental role of this assembly is to make sure that each time anything happens has served the people of this nation and their aspirations. Senabu Jase, Star TV News.
Gambia Angola China Holding GACH on Friday organized an end-of-year staff dinner. The dinner was held at the company's headquarters along the Battle Harding Highway. Mariam Adam reports.
Ms. Fatoumata Jawara Dukure, personal assistant to the Chief Executive Officer of GAJ, says the purpose of this dinner is to surprise the CEO of the company for the outstanding support he has rendered to the staff. She thanked the CEO, Abubakar Jawara, for the unflinching support and the good work he is doing for the country. The Human Resources Manager of GAJ Global, Ms. Adam Toureba, says the purpose of this dinner is to motivate the staff and encourage them to speed up their work. She says the company has recognized their hard work and loyalty. That is why they decided to surprise them with dinner and certify them as well. She stressed that the management is very happy with their performance as she encouraged them to continue doing more. Ms. Bat thanked the CEO of GAJ, Abubakar Jawara, for the love he has for the staff and Gambia. The Minister of Trade and Employment, Mr. Lamin Job, thanked GAJ company for organizing such dinner for their staff. He said this is a good sign of the progress of the company. Minister Job described Mr. Abubakar Jawara as a patriotic citizen and hard-working man. He called on Gambians to emulate Mr. Jawara to come home and invest in factories in order to reduce unemployment in the country. The CEO of the GAJ company, who is also the Gambian Consular General to China, His Excellency Abubakar Jawara, thanked the management and staff of GAJ Global for surprising him with a dinner. He promised that GAJ will continue employing more Gambians in years to come. The dinner was attended by the Jawara family, honorable ministers, National Assembly members of Kantora and Busumbala constituency, and Aja Maimuna Balde, National Women Mobilizer and President of Senegambian Women Federation, and many other dignitaries. Certificates were awarded to the staff, and a surprise golden certificate was also awarded to the GAJ CEO, Abubakar Jawara, by his staff. Reporting for Star TV News, I am Maria Madem.
We'll be going for a short break and we'll be right back with the international news. Please stay tuned. Now news beyond our borders. Turkey is evacuating 16 seriously wounded victims of Saturday's truck bomb attack in Somalia as authorities struggle to cope with the worst attack in its soil in 2 years. Nearly 80 people were killed and more than 100 injured after a truck loaded with explosives detonated at a checkpoint in the capital, Mogadishu. Al Jazeera's Harun Mutasa reports from Nairobi in neighboring Kenya.
They survived Saturday's truck bomb blast in Mogadishu, but sustained some of the worst injuries. Now some victims have been airlifted to better equipped hospitals in Turkey. Clinics and hospitals in Mogadishu are struggling to cope with the dozens of wounded.
From the time the explosion occurred up until now, the government leaders have been working hard to provide the services needed by those injured in the explosion. It's now possible for us to airlift 16 of some of the seriously injured in the attack to our brothers in Turkey.
A truck loaded with explosives was detonated at a security checkpoint in the capital. Somalia's president is blaming the armed group Al-Shabaab. And Mohammed Abdullahi Farmajo is vowing the country won't be demoralized by the attack, which caused the highest number of casualties in 2 years.
The magnitude of the damage caused by the blast led the Prime Minister of Somalia to request assistance from the Turkish government to provide treatment to those injured in the attack.
A Turkish military transporter landed with much-needed supplies and medical staff. Some will stay to treat patients at a Turkish-run hospital in Mogadishu. As Turkey seeks to boost its influence in the Horn of Africa, it's been an increasingly important aid donor, especially since the Somali famine in 2011. As more aid arrives and the badly injured leave, their country is on edge. Somalis constantly wondering when and where the next attack will be. Harun Mutasa, Al Jazeera.
The United Nations recognized government of national accord is calling on the International Criminal Court to take action against renegade military commander Khalifa Haftar. It says his crimes against humanity must be stopped. Hundreds of civilians have been killed or wounded since the beginning of the offensive in April. Al Jazeera's Mahmoud Abdelwahid reports from Tripoli.
The fight for Tripoli is escalating. Now the Foreign Ministry is calling on the United Nations and the International Criminal Court to intervene. The UN-recognized government accuses forces fighting for warlord Khalifa Haftar of committing crimes against humanity in their campaign to capture the capital.
We are asking the international community to perform its role. Haftar doesn't have any legitimacy and has been destroying Tripoli for the past 8 months. Yet the international community has not moved to stop him. Only now, as we have a new ally, regional and international powers are rising against us.
The war on the southern outskirts of Tripoli has cost the lives of hundreds of civilians and wounded many more. Haftar's forces repeatedly targeted residential areas and government-run facilities with airstrikes and rockets. Nearly 140,000 Libyans have fled their homes to seek safety. Also under threat are oil revenues, which are the backbone of Libya's economy. The National Oil Corporation is assessing the damage following recent airstrikes on the oil refinery in the western city of Zawiya. And as government forces battle to stop the fall of Tripoli, Haftar's forces are reported to be getting reinforcement from Russian mercenaries and advanced weapons supplied by the United Arab Emirates. Turkish troops could soon be joining the conflict. The promised Turkish support for forces loyal to the UN-recognized government is being seen by some as crucial to preventing the fall of Tripoli. Turkish president says Parliament will vote next month on a mandate to send troops. But as Haftar's forces advance further into the southern neighborhoods and closer to densely populated areas of the capital, the fear of human casualties is growing. Mahmoud Abdelwahid, Al Jazeera, Tripoli.
Taiwan's presidential candidates have faced off in their final televised debate ahead of January's elections. Cross-strait ties were the focus of the debate, with more nations cutting ties with Taiwan this year and switching their allegiances to Beijing. This leaves the self-governing island with just 15 diplomatic islands. President Tsai Ing-wen favors protecting Taiwan's sovereignty from China. Her main rival Han Kuo-yu from the Chinese Nationalist Party wants closer ties with Beijing. Tsai is using Hong Kong protests to bolster her case, while Han accuses Tsai of lying. The president says China is the biggest threat to island sovereignty and democracy. Al Jazeera's Alexi O'Brien reports.
Relations with China dominated the heated TV debate between the three candidates vying for Taiwan's top job. As she bids to secure a second four-year term, President Tsai Ing-wen says Beijing is the biggest threat to Taiwan's free and democratic way of life.
My rival Han Kuo-yu hesitates when asked which country he thinks would harm the well-being of Taiwan the most. Let me tell you now, that country is China.
Han, from the Chinese Nationalist Party, or KMT, is widely seen as Tsai's main challenger. He favours closer ties with Beijing and accuses Tsai of exploiting the protests in Hong Kong to bolster her case.
Hong Kong's people are bleeding from fighting against China. President Tsai, what have you done to help Hong Kong? Hong Kong's people are bleeding while you are enjoying electoral gains. Your campaign is based on the blood of Hong Kong people.
Pro-democracy demonstrations in Hong Kong over China's perceived efforts to curb the territory's freedoms have ignited concerns in Taiwan. Some see the 6 months of protests in Hong Kong as giving a timely boost to Tsai's re-election campaign.
We could see a steady and then a decisive shift in public opinion in Taiwan responding to events in Hong Kong. And President Tsai benefited from the aggressive approach of the Chinese government, both towards Taiwan, for example, over the diplomatic allies, and over how they handled Hong Kong.
President Xi Jinping has emphasised that Taiwan is a renegade province that needs to be reunified by force if necessary. China's pressured countries to cut diplomatic ties with Taiwan. The number of nations retaining relations with the island has shrunk to 15. And China's seeking to win favour with voters in Taiwan by making it easier for Taiwanese companies to invest in the mainland. But if the opinion polls are correct and Tsai is re-elected, China's efforts are expected to face a further backlash on China's island neighbour. Alexia O'Brien, Al Jazeera.
India's opposition Congress party has called a new citizenship law an attack on the country's traditions, culture and history. The new legislation eases citizenship for religious minorities from neighboring Muslim-majority countries. Protesters say the law goes against India's secular constitution by not including Muslims, and women are on the front line with those protests. Al Jazeera's Ancha Vahra reports from New Delhi.
16 days into the nationwide protests against the contentious citizenship law, and the women of Shaheen Bagh in New Delhi are undeterred by the 26 dead, arrests of 1,000 and the biting cold. The police say they are only maintaining law and order and deny trying to quell the protests, some of them violent. These women say they feel threatened by the police and accuse some officers of committing what they call atrocities. Shaheen Kausar is leading the female protesters.
The women are protesting for their safety and to protect their children. Fear has taken hold of them since the clashes, so they want the government to come here and assuage their concerns.
But no one from the government has come.
These women are braving the cold with their infants and toddlers to protest against the controversial citizenship law. They say the violence used by the police to suppress the protest, including beating up students in a nearby university, led them here. And since, they felt unsafe.
Shaheen Kausar vividly remembers the events of 13th December, the day she says policemen first thrashed the students of Jamia Millia Islamia University with sticks. The children of many of the women protesters study there. She says she's never seen them so angry and scared as they rushed to help. Saida Hamid is a women's rights activist who has long experience of working with Muslim women. She says that police brutality and the unjust citizenship law have forced women, even from relatively conservative backgrounds, to step out and protest.
But never have I seen this kind of spontaneous outpouring of agitation and protest by Muslim women. They're afraid for their next generation, for their children. They're afraid that they may become either refugees in their own lands or they may be thrown out.
The mother of 6 says police have pressured her husband to stop her protesting. She is equally concerned by divisions within the protest movement and says the lack of leadership may be just the windfall India's government is looking for. The leader of the Congress party support the protests, along with other parties opposed to the ruling Hindu nationalist BJP. On Saturday, Rahul Gandhi visited the northeast state of Assam, where the protests first began over 2 weeks ago. Back in the capital, the female protesters say they're not against one political party in favor of another. They just want the basic right to be able to live safely and with dignity in their homeland. Anshul Vora, Al Jazeera, New Delhi.
Before we end the news, a recap of our main headlines. Gambia Immigration Department inaugurates 2 additional stations. Parliament rejects a president-appointed ombudsman. CDA Jatta calls Office of Ombudsman powerless. That's all for this edition of the news. Please enjoy the rest of our programs and join us tomorrow for more news. Thank you.